Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar on creating an infographic in Adobe Creative Cloud Express on looking at character archetypes. We'll get started very shortly, but if you do have any questions or any comments and you're able to post them, please do, and we'll answer those throughout the session and also towards the end if possible. Okay, so we're here today to talk about creating an infographic where we're looking at using that infographic to explain different character archetypes, and we can also talk a little bit about using that from particularly an English classroom perspective and how to create different visuals to be able to delve deeper into sort of what goes on behind a character's thinking and so on as well. Just to introduce myself, my name is Sam. I am a senior consultant at Tablet Academy UK. I'm a former English teacher and head of department, so I'm very, very passionate about how we can use tools like Adobe to be able to give our students opportunities to explore different tasks, different activities and learning journeys in a creative and fulfilling way. I'm really passionate about the use of digital tools, so I am a Microsoft specialist, and I'm now growing to become an Adobe specialist as well. I come from sort of different backgrounds in terms of technology, but I certainly am really happy to be here today in my sort of capacity as a former English teacher. So, there we go. So in terms of our agenda, looking at sort of Adobe Creative Cloud Express from a literacy perspective, so thinking about kind of using different forms within the Adobe suite, looking at how to create infographics and some handy hints and tips, and about why we'd want to as well, not just kind of the click here, press there, but actually how we would want to use those infographics. And then how you can then go and find some useful teaching resources that will help you to use the Adobe suite in lots of different capacities, and that you can share with your colleagues in all different manners of subject areas and different teaching kind of capacities. We'll look at those both in terms of how to find those from an Adobe point of view, but also how Tablet Academy UK are supporting Adobe with mapping their resources to the English the British curriculum as well. Okay, so key thing of importance here, we are preparing our students for success. You know, we're preparing them to be independent in how they look, sort of work, but also to build a range of skills that will help them to move forward kind of in whatever facet of life that they move into in terms of careers, in terms of university, in terms of further study, and really thinking also about how we as teachers can also bring creativity into teaching and learning. And that's something that sort of Adobe are really passionate about, supporting education to do that. So when we are thinking about supporting our students' digital creativity, we do have a range of different stages. So these are actually kind of in American kind of stages, but if we think of that as our kind of primary school, and then also right the way through to our secondary schools and into college, we've got the Adobe Acrobat Pro, but key thing that we're looking at today is the Adobe Creative Cloud Express. If you haven't come across that before, that is a way to bring together a range of different Adobe offerings into one portal for us to be able to use for different things. So we have things like the ability to create infographics, websites, videos. There's lots of different tools available there. As we go up, there are kind of more detailed, more complex tools for students to be able to use. So as we go up into the secondary and college grade students, effectively we do have things like Adobe Premiere Rush, which is our video editing, Photoshop Express, and so on. So that's all included within our Adobe offering there. Okay, so Within the Creative Cloud Express, we have particularly things that might have been relevant to people before, things like Adobe Spark, if you remember that. That's also included kind of under this umbrella. So let's go and have a look now at I'll come back to the edX towards the end, but let's move on to having a look at get the right slide for you. Okay. Oh, seem to have lost that there. There we go. Okay, so let's come away from that. So what we're going to do is go into our web browser. Okay, so we're looking at today creating an infographic explaining a character archetype. And if you want to get to this web page, you can just scan this QR code just here. Okay, so if you do want to get to that web page, I'm going to leave that up on the screen for a second. Do feel free to scan that to get to this particular web page here. Okay. And then we can see that that takes us to the edX environment. So we will come back and explore this in a bit more detail, but I just want to focus on the content for today's webinar, and that's looking at creating an infographic explaining a character archetype. So let me just bring that back up. Okay, so in this case, Adobe have created not only a lesson plan that we can use very practically in the classroom, but they've also got a full range of resources available that you can download, and you can get that free resource by clicking on the Get Free Resource, and then you can choose to download it to your device. You can send it if you're using the Google environment, so if you're using the Google Workspace, you can send it to your Google Drive, or if you're using Microsoft 365 or sort of Office 365, you can use the OneDrive option there. It will require you to log in. So if you haven't already sort of set yourself up in the Adobe environment, I suggest that that's something you need to do essentially as part of this anyway. And we are in this webinar assuming that you're kind of up and running with Adobe sort of to be able to use in the classroom. If you need any support, do get in touch and we can help with getting you onboarded if you aren't already. Okay, so to get these resources, we said you do need to be signed in, so we can see I'm signed in there. Okay, and then I can get the resource there as PDFs and so on, and that will give me the lesson plan and all of the different resources. And in this particular one, when we're looking at the resource here, okay, so I'm just going to bring across the Google Drive here. There we go. So what we've got here is the ability to be able to see an outline for our lesson, which is including sampling a character, different archetypes for students, and then actually get them to select a character, and they're going to create their infographic based on that. Okay, so what I want to do is for us to focus on what that infographic might look like, the different details that they could include in that, and how they would approach kind of getting started. So I'm going to take us over to Adobe Express. So I'm just logged into express.adobe.com, and then that's going to take me to my main portal page. And then I can choose from there to start my project. Now, depends on the age group of students that you're looking at, but depending on that, you can then decide whether you want to choose one of the templates like an infographic. You could look at a poster, for instance. Lots of different types there. You can scan through those on the right hand side here. And then when you actually expand the different options, so let's pick infographic here. Okay. We can start from scratch, okay, or we can pick one of the different templates on the left hand side. So then we can scan down and choose a particular template. Now, depending on what we're trying to achieve with the students and the age group of the students we're working with, we can choose different sort of levels of detail here. So for instance, if we wanted to pick the different features of different traits that we would associate with, say, a hero, we could pick sort of one of the options here with different stages, and they could pick, sort of 6 key traits or 4 key traits, however many you are defining, that we would expect to see from a hero. Whereas if we wanted to look at perhaps comparing, perhaps 2 different characters and the way that they are seen as a hero or, a villain or, whatever character archetype you're looking at, or even perhaps taking a particular character, and when you start to go up into the higher levels of study here, we could be looking at, taking a particular character and looking at why they're both a hero, and why they're not, why they're an anti-hero perhaps, but also why they might be perceived as a villain. So you could actually kind of use that kind of comparative option there. Okay. Within the templates that you're given, you are actually given kind of a very, very simple Adobe Express template that you can use. So you can click on that, and then you can open that template into Adobe Express, and that will allow you to then edit that, so you can remix this design, and any of the templates that are available, you can do that. So we can click on remix this design, in which case we can then go in and customize that. So we can do things like customize the background, we can customize the pictures that are in there, we can choose to have those from our own pictures, and we can choose to have those from stock Adobe images from within the assets here. Okay, so I could go into photos, and if I clicked on this particular photo here, I can then adapt that if I wanted to. Okay. So let's go into the one we've got here. So we've got this blank template. Okay, so what we're going to do now is pick the infographic that we want to look at. So let's keep this fairly simple for the moment. Okay, I'm just going to choose this infographic here. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. Go. Let's just try and go back and get that template there. Okay, so I'm just going to go back a second. Okay, we'll try that one again. Okay, so I go back into the infographics. Okay, it's this one I want to use. There we go, perfect. Okay, so now what I've got is the ability to customize that. So if you think about it from the student's perspective, we can direct them to a particular template, we can direct them to a particular space, and we can actually kind of help them to develop the content on the page. So in this case, I might direct them to this particular one, depending on if they've used Adobe before, and sort of the Creative Cloud Express environment before. It might be a case that you actually give them more freedom and you let them choose kind of the template that suits them, or you could let them actually create that from scratch. Okay, so let's go for this one for the moment. So I'm just going to click on the infographic here. Something to point out is you do have your layers at the bottom there. So each of these particular elements is a layer that would appear on our page here. And we can then, if we want to kind of move between those layers, sometimes it's actually easier just to bring those layers in place, so we can see the numbers there. If I click on 4, it's now highlighted the 4 and 3. And then if I want to edit those, so rather than clicking around the page, if students are finding it difficult to kind of click on exactly the right thing, it could be useful to actually show them the different layers, and then they can actually kind of customize those if they need to. Okay, so let's start by changing the title. Okay, so we could put in our title of hero here. Now, as part of the lesson plan, we could be asking students to pick a hero from a text that we're studying or from texts we've studied in the past, and asking them to pick out why those characters are heroes, okay, or heroines. Okay, so in this case, we could be picking characters. Let's keep this sort of fairly simple, and thinking about kind of the younger years as well as secondary. Let's pick Matilda. Okay, from Roald Dahl's novel Matilda. Okay, so if I put in here, in fact, I'm going to type in heroines. Okay, and I'm going to put in Matilda. Okay, fantastic. So we've got our title, and then what we could do is then just edit those different boxes then to be able to pick out different characteristics about Matilda. Okay, so things that she's, that make her a hero. Okay, so we're going to edit the text there. Okay, let's just close the edit shape. There we go. Okay. Just want to put some text in there. Okay, so what we can do is add some text, and then we get the edit text at the bottom here, and notice that that is giving us another layer over the top, because the box itself is a layer, so we want to have the text layer over the top. So we're going to just choose here for the first one. I'm just going to say that she is curious. Okay. Now we've got that layer there, we can bring that up to the top. Okay. Oh, there's me clicking on the wrong thing. There we go. So pick up the text there, and I can say that she's curious there. Okay. And then I can choose to add text again. Okay, again, I've got my text box here. I can either double click to edit that, or I can just click on the right hand side. It's about choosing for you and for your students which works better. Sometimes they're quite used to just double clicking to edit. That's going to highlight the box there, and then they can start typing, or they can just put their cursor at the top. Okay, so I said that she's curious. Okay, something else that she is, I would think, is fearless. Okay, so we can then add that, and we can see, we can start to kind of build up this idea of who Matilda is in terms of, sort of her character. Okay, and so we can then start to bring in perhaps some other layers of creativity for students to be able to use. So they could start to think about perhaps adding in photographs. So we can click on the photos here. They can search for Adobe stock, or it could be that actually they've got a photo that they want to upload. Okay, so something that reminds them of Matilda. Okay, something that reminds them of sort of something within her character. Okay, if they've got a photo that they want to upload, they could do that, or they can just pick from the Adobe stock images here. Okay, so let's put in for Matilda. Okay, I always think of pigtails when I think of Matilda. Okay. Okay, so we could pick in a picture of somebody with pigtails there. Okay, you could sort of have a look through all the different images that are available. You could choose something different there. It's up to you kind of for what you want to put in, but also the key thing is it's for the students to be creative about what they put in place here as well. So it could be that we're looking at how Matilda is as a heroine. Okay, and one of the things that she does is saves her friends. Okay, so we could put in here the idea of friends. Okay, go, and we can pick a key picture there. Okay, so then we can bring that into our infographic, and if we wanted to, because that's kind of not sitting very well with the background, we can easily then take the background out from there, or we can choose a different color to be in the background of that photograph. Notice that if I click on there, I can remove that background using the button here. So let's just do that. Okay, give that a second to process. Okay, and then now I'm happy with that photograph. I can, if I wanted to, sort of customize that. I can, sort of change some of the different ideas here, but we'll just keep that fairly simple for now. And I'm going to click on the tick there. Okay, so now I've got my group of friends, okay, as a photograph on here. And we can start to kind of add in some other imagery. So we can pick different imagery from the book and perhaps add that around, sort of within the page as we want to. Okay, if they want to perhaps number things in different ways. Perhaps we want to color code some of the different options. We could do that. And as we take this on to higher levels and thinking about kind of moving to perhaps more complex characters, so let's take Macbeth as an example. We might want to include things like quotes and so on. So the text basis that's on the page here could be more related to what it is that they might look at for that particular character. Okay, so we've seen kind of a template there. We can pick from, we said, a range of different templates here. We've said that those are infographics. You can search for different things. So if I take out keys, okay, and just use infographic, okay, we can see kind of it appears in a slightly different range there, but again we've got a range of different options. So it could be that we structure it slightly differently. If we want some more text, we could pick an infographic style like this, where we've actually got the option to have more text spaces there. So again, it's about picking the right thing for the right job there. When we're looking at using Adobe in this way, we're really thinking about how students can build their understanding of, whether it be creative characters, whether it be understanding different emotions within a character, whether it be looking at even just kind of building their understanding of how they picture what a character might look like or sound like, or building their understanding, because it's very, very important for students to be able to lift that character from the page and to be able to see, visualize, to be able to imagine what that character actually is like, not just kind of what they look like in terms of physical appearance, but actually more kind of how they come across when we're thinking about the traits that we would associate with different character archetypes. How do they pick that up from the text? I was talking to somebody earlier actually about how we can use creativity and visualization to help students to really build their understanding of different texts, but also from within their own storytelling, to be able to use the different aspects of bringing in pictorial evidence along with the text, along with different imagery, to help them to understand kind of a particular fixed character from literature or a type of trait in an archetype, but also their own. So if we're asking students to write their own stories, could they build up their own characters in this way? So when we're creating an infographic for this kind of purpose, it could be actually that we're using that for students in a planning context. Now, the lesson that this comes from is very much about them kind of delving into, what different types of archetypes of characters are. But actually, we could be also looking at them using that to help plan their own ideas, because often, certainly when I was teaching kind of in the English classroom, it could be that we're studying a particular genre. We could be studying, how heroes, we'll use heroes as an example, but how heroes are presented, say, in particular modern fiction. So I've taught before, say, the Hunger Games. So we could look at Katniss Everdeen and Peter Millark as two characters who, both have traits that could be seen as heroic. And then I've actually taken that steps further when we've been teaching that for students to create their own dystopian fiction, their own short stories. And then thinking about, for them, planning their own characters, it could be that we make this a two-stage process where students actually create their infographic at the beginning of what they think a general archetype is, or very specifically picking a character to then break down. But it could be then that the second part of that is their own infographic as well. Okay, so let's have a look at this from going from a different kind of style of infographic here. So I'll come out and just pop in a new project. Okay, so again, I'm just doing this a slightly different way so that we can see kind of different ways to go in. So I can create new here from templates. I've got lots of different options in the quick actions, but what I want to do is pick up from the templates here, and that's just going to take me from our templates that we can also share across our class. So the reason I wanted to point this out is actually you could create a template for students in Adobe and then add that to here for you to then be able to share with students as well. Okay, so let's go back to our home. Okay, so we're going to choose our infographics here. Okay, and let's pick the comparatives option. Okay, so obviously this is a template that has particular text, but we can change that and make that say hero or villain. Okay. And then again, we change the text here, and we could say list different traits show that character is a particular hero or villain. So if we pick a character that could be seen as either option, we could show that a character like, so let's take Lenny from Of Mice and Men, for instance. Sort of if we took Lenny is in many ways a bit of an anti-hero. We could argue that there are certain sort of aspects that wouldn't necessarily make him a villain, but certainly perhaps sort of counter against him being a hero. Okay, so in fact, let me show that as a hero or villain. Okay. And again, we can then decide kind of things like the colour of the text. So, for instance, if we wanted to change that, we can change the font. Okay, and we can sort of make that slightly different again. So the kids can be creative, or the students can be creative about how they approach that. They can change kind of how all of this looks, so they can change the background. They can change kind of all different aspects here. Okay. So instead of saying prose, okay, we can change that to hero, and in our cons there. And again, I'm just clicking on the option and then editing that, but we did say, remember, we've got the layers there to switch between if we wanted to. Okay, so let's put that in. Okay. So for the students, then they can add in kind of their key phrases. So again, it depends on kind of how much we want them to write as to which templates we pick. In this case, I'm just going to go for simple kind of words here. Okay, so for instance, as a hero, I would suggest that he is protective. Okay, so we can then bring in some text here. Okay, we're going to add the text in, and we're going to say he is. Okay. So again, the students can then take that down to a more reasonable size here, and we can bring that in. Now, obviously, the blue is not going to work against the green there, so we can nice and easily change the text colour and bring that in place. Okay, so the students can start to balance one against the other. So if we then wanted to add in, we'll add in another text box here, or we could just copy the one that we've got there. Okay, we can add in the text, and we can say, actually, just double click to edit there. Okay, sorry, I should be talking about George, not Lenny, apologies. But in fact, we can talk about Lenny as a hero or villain. Okay, he does kill Curly's wife. Okay, there we go. And again, we can take that down to a smaller size. Okay, and we'll make that white. And then we can bring that across to here and shape it. So the students then get to design the kind of the way this lays out. Now, the great thing about that is that the students can then customize it for them to be able to remember things, for them to be able to engage with that text, and engage with kind of different options. And again, so we could use pictorial references in here. So we, sort of wanted to add in, sort of the idea of the mouse. We wanted to add in, sort of the idea of different parts of the story. We can bring those in. But also, if we were looking at this from a sort of a upper level kind of perspective, thinking about the upper secondary level, we might actually want to do things like include key quotes and so on. So again, we can then expand kind of the option of the template that we use to include more text. Okay, so key things then in terms of we've got a whole range of different editable graphics. We've got icons available to us. If I pop back to the home area here for a moment, it's worth thinking about, how we use different, perhaps different icons. So we have different icons for literature. We have different icons for a range of different subjects, and a range of different templates that are very much, for the classroom. And so what we can do is bring in, sort of, obviously we've got the different templates in terms of things like infographics and so on, but we can also bring in different logos. We've got different options, and again, we can search all of that. We can filter it by colours. We can show, sort of whether they're animated or not. We have a wide range of different options available to us. Okay, and we can be really clear about, sort of, for students, having access to all of these different resources means that they can really be creative in the way that they approach designing their infographic there. Okay, so let's come back into our idea here. Okay, so for instance, if we wanted to look at the icon set for the literature options here, okay, we have a range of different things. So we have, sort of, we can bring in different ones of these. We can bring them in from our assets as well, and we can effectively use those. So for instance, if we wanted to talk about, sort of how a character communicates, we could, use an icon there, for instance, that's talking about the communication side of things. It's really about picking the right resources that suit us. I think for students, signposting where they can pick up kind of the different options that they might want to use. And bear in mind, sort of they'll explore this very well themselves anyway. But certainly kind of thinking about you've got obviously things like your key shapes that you can bring in as icon sets. So it doesn't just have to be, when I talked about kind of using pictorial references in your infographics, it could actually be that they're using icons to reference different pictorial options here. So it doesn't just have to be pictures. You can actually search different shapes as well. Okay, in terms of the design assets, again, we've got different graphic groups, we've got different illustrations that are available. You can do things like using overlays and so on, but certainly I think from an infographics point of view, it's probably about keeping things, or certainly from the teaching point of view that we're talking about here today, by keeping this sort of fairly simple, sort of, but those are available to students if you wanted to use them. You can create your own libraries. So if you do have a series of resources that you wanted available for students to be able to use, you can upload assets to Creative Cloud libraries, and then you can use those effectively in a template which you could then share with students as well. Okay. In terms of the finished product, okay, once they've got their project, okay, they would go into, let's just go back into our projects here. Okay, I'm just going to go back and find our infographic. Here we'll take our Matilda one. Okay, so if they've completed their infographic and they've filled in the different things, they've added the different options they want available, so sort of you're happy and they're happy and they're ready to share that. first thing they can do, they can download that, but if they're not using their own device, that can cause problems for you in terms of sharing. And actually, technically, they don't need to download that because they can hold it within Creative Cloud Express. So what we can do then is share that, and then we can choose to publish. Notice that you have the option to make a template. Okay, and that's where we were talking about you making a template as the teacher. But in this case, we're just going to publish this. Okay, and in which case for the students, then they can share a hyperlink with you. Okay, so let that generate. There we go. They can share that hyperlink with you. Perhaps depending on what platform you're using, that could be, sort of in an assignment. It could be in both Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams, or whichever platform you're using. It could be that you opt for them to directly post something to Teams or Google Classroom. And again, there are connectors to allow you to work collaboratively across those platforms with Adobe. Okay, and if we click on the publish options here, we can give that a proper title here. So we can perhaps give that our name. So I'll just call it Sam's work, okay, on Tilda. Okay, and then that's kind of at least going to give kind of people the option to see that when they click on the link as they go through. So that's a simple way to share that with from the student to the teacher. And again, if you are using kind of one of the platforms where you've got the option to add a link as their work, they could just add this in straight away. And that way there's no need to download and upload. It can just be directly into here. Okay. There is the option for students to, as I said, to download that if they wanted to locally, and then potentially say upload that to, sort of something like their Google Drive, their Microsoft 365, OneDrive, and that sort of thing. But again, I think it's not necessarily kind of needed when it can be just published sort of through here. Okay, so thinking about then, how do we find kind of a wide range of resources available to us? So for instance, if I go back to our creating an infographic explaining a character archetype, where we can, sort of grab that lesson plan that's been written by an educator, we can grab the resources available to us, we can have student resources which we can upload into an assignment, for instance, or into if you're using something like a class notebook in Microsoft, for instance, you could upload those directly into there. Now that's fantastic, and that means that we are not having to create all of the main resources here, because actually a lot of that's been done for us. And there's a wide range of resources available on the Adobe Education Exchange platform. So we can come into here and we can click on so I'll just click on the main teaching resources, take us back a level. So we can see that we can filter that down by different subject areas. There are the current featured teaching resources. And so, sort of we've got a whole range of different options here. We can see that there's over 10,000 resources there to be able to access and leverage. And we can also search for those. So if I were to go into see all resources here, that's going to take me into a search area, which is going to allow me to filter different options. So I can filter by different subject areas. I can filter by the type of activity. So if I'm definitely looking on using Express or Photoshop or whichever the product is, I can actually filter it based on that. And we can also go with the education level. Okay. And time to complete. So you can do a search there. So for instance, if I did a search for the word character, just to keep in line with what we're doing here, we can see there's the creating an infographic explaining a character archetype. There's a whole range of different ones there of different lessons and different suggestions of how you can use Adobe with those particular different contexts that you might have. Now, just to signpost that we've also got within Tablet Academy, we've been mapping these different resources to the British curriculum. So if I pop over to here, And so that's ta.education/creativity and /search. And in fact, what I'll do very quickly here for you now is just pop up a QR code onto the screen. So there's a QR code that will take you to this page. Okay, and I'll take that back off the screen now. There we go. So effectively then you can actually drill that down. Okay, so you can say primary, secondary, post-16 FEHE. Okay, different key stages, different subject areas that are taught in the UK curriculum, different type of resources, so whether it's lesson plans, whether it's classroom resources, whether it's a specific activity and so on. And there's also the edX platform has a wide range of resources, so it's not just teaching resources, it's training and that sort of thing as well. So you'll be able to search for whichever type of resource you'd be looking for. And again, much like the search in edX, you can search by particular different options. And then as we're growing this at the moment, so as we develop the mapping of the different resources against the curriculum here, you'll see that expand as well. Okay, so that means I can, let's pick literature as a search option. Okay. Yep, I use maths as an example there. I'll go and get them to add some hashtags for literature to the character ones. Okay, but effectively you can see kind of that different things have been tagged in different ways. You can then go and search those. These are going to take you back to edX, but what it does is allows you to pick from a resource bank that is global and is tailored for different education systems. What we've done here is try to make that so that anything that's kind of mapped against our curriculum in different key stages, in different subject areas, that we can help you to find those resources really easily. I hope this webinar has been useful for you. I do actively encourage you to really make the most of using Adobe and all of the different sort of options available to you within the Creative Cloud Express suite. You do have, we go into home here, obviously we're currently sitting in Adobe Express, but you do have kind of different things you can explore within the app launcher here. And I definitely kind of advocate using this for students as a way for them to be really creative in how they approach a range of different learning tasks. Do join us on future webinars. We'll be looking at a range of different topics, and you can always access those and book for those on the ta.education website. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. If anybody's got any questions, please do pop them into the comments. I will hang around for a moment to answer any questions. But otherwise, thank you very much.